Science Institute at the University of Southern California. Also a member of Women in Black, Los Angeles, and I imagine you will tell us any other group that you're a member of related to this issue. And a long-time activist for peace and justice in Israel-Palestine. So I'm delighted that he was able to join us this evening, Dr. Yigal Arens.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is on a sort of low burner as far as big news is concerned. There are other things happening in the Middle East that are attracting everyone's attention, which obviously have a bearing on the future of Israel and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So what is it that we do hear about these days? We sort of hear that there are no negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. People lament that. Some people lament that sometimes. There is a trickle of news items that continue about increase in settlement sizes, larger settlements. There is something that I'll devote some time to here because I think it's interesting, a marked deterioration in Israeli democracy. I put that in quotes because there is this issue that a lot of people don't address, that non-Jewish citizens are treated very differently from Jewish citizens in Israel. But even from the way Israelis treat Jews and Jewish organizations, there's been a considerable deterioration. Among Palestinians, there appear to be, we hear once in a while, attempts to negotiate between the different factions, between the Palestinian Authority, or the PLO that rule in the West Bank, and Hamas that rules in Gaza. I'll go through all of these later so people can give you an overview. There is the Arab Spring, as many people call it, which, well, different parties that have an interest in the Middle East have certain attitudes towards and are often concerned about the impact that it's going to have on Israel or the other interests, when we're talking about the U.S. and the Middle East. And perhaps that is a little bit more in the news recently, all these threats of war, right? Israel's going to attack. Is Israel going to attack Iran? Is it not going to attack Iran? Is the U.S. going to attack? Is the UK going to attack Iran? Who knows, right? Everybody seems to enjoy the thought of attacking Iran for some reason. So, as I said, there's been no really big news item, so I'll go through these. I think there are some, there are things happening that are of interest to people who have an interest in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the Middle East in general, and maybe you haven't heard of. I'm hoping to give people a little bit of information that would be new or interesting to them. So negotiations, right? So we don't hear much about it. Every once in a while someone will say, there needs to be negotiation. Why aren't the Palestinians on? It has become clearer and clearer to larger groups of people that the Israelis really don't want negotiations. Okay? They may say that they do, and what that gets you is that eventually, you know, Sarkozy and Obama stand with a microphone open and they don't know, and talk about how Netanyahu is lying to them. Right? I assume you've heard that. Well, someone actually, because of this question of whether Netanyahu is a liar or isn't a liar, interest, someone went and dug up an old interview, an old news item that describes an interview that Netanyahu gave about 6 years ago by now to a group of settlers. So this wasn't an interview to the press, right? He may not even have realized that someone was there taking notes and was going to publish this. Someone dug this out, and I got it pointed to it. Unfortunately, it's in Hebrew. I read it. If other people do, I can give you a copy. And there was an article about this that appeared in 2005. And Netanyahu was talking to people, elder members of the Likud party, and who were criticizing him for being or stating his willingness to reach agreements with Palestinians on various issues. And what he said is, he said, you have to understand, I have a trick. That's the word he used, even in Hebrew, Greek. And he called it saying, yes, but. He says, when in the political world, he explained, I'm reading the article that's quoting him, in the political world, he said, there are many ways to say no. And one of them is to say yes, but, and to present conditions that you know the other side can't fulfill. And then he goes on and gives examples of how he had been or was planning to or had been doing that before. And I think if you now go back again, or you may have noticed it originally, very recently now, when the U.S. has made certain demands or Europeans have made certain demands, the first thing you hear out of Israel is, you know, the cabinet met and said they accept this. And then a day later you hear, yes, except they have a few conditions that Palestinians have to meet before they will proceed. And these are always chosen, and apparently he even says, intentionally, so that the other side can't really fulfill them. And he notes that, and you may remember that this was the case, he gives as an example here, this was a few years back, the roadmap, which continues to get referred to as, you know, one of the many frameworks for reaching a settlement between Israelis and Palestinians. And he said that that's exactly what he did. He said the Israelis accepted the roadmap and then published 14 conditions on actually going through and implementing it. And he actually talks also about the Oslo Agreement and how he had managed to stop implementation of that. So those who claim that Netanyahu is a liar may not know that he isn't really, because he tells people what it is that he plans to do. And so it is no accident that there really is no progress. This Israeli government apparently believes that status quo, the situation that they're in, is in their favor. That is that they can control matters, right? It's manageable, that an agreement would be detrimental to their interests. They don't want to give up these significant portions of the West Bank, and they feel that in an agreement they would have to. And so they feel that they can continue in the situation the way it is. Some people think they're wrong. Clearly they're not those people. And so while, you know, things stagnate, we get this trickle, but consistent. But it's quite consistent of news about enlargement and increase in settlement activities. I decided to, you know, I wanted to figure out a way to determine how many such news items there were. So I went to the Haaretz website, you know, do it, and there's a search engine. I put in settlements, and I just checked for the past 2 months, 60 days before today. Well, I did this yesterday. 60 days before yesterday, and then I pulled out all the items that are really about new settlement activity. And I mean, this is what I got, right? I mean, this, and this is only in the past 60 days. So it continues unabated. You know, 2,000 units here, 300 units there, some land taken over. I guess the one that's perhaps most telling is the news item, which was actually early in October, so it's the early 60 days before today, where Israel is actually acting in a very serious contradiction to its obligations under this roadmap. So if you don't remember what the roadmap was, the idea was, at the time, to get the negotiations moving forward by, so things always stalled because they used to have a sort of a tit-for-tat kind of arrangement. That's most agreements. You know, you do this, and then I'll do that, and then you do this, and I'll do that. And if something got stuck in the middle, nothing moved anymore. So the idea of the roadmap was there's a whole lot of things that both sides have to do together. They're not dependent on each other. You just have to do them. And then we reach a new stage, and after that, everybody does more. Now, things got stuck because Israel didn't even fulfill the original first stage of this. The first stage included something that at the time seemed very simple. It said that there is, Israel has created settlements almost since 1967. It started in a year later. But the government has authorized most of these. These were things that were decided upon by government agencies, and they, took over the land one way or another. But there was a period in the early 2000s where there were a lot of cases where individuals just went and took over land and built some homes. And so these were illegal, they were called illegal outposts. They were illegal under Israel's own rules, right? The government did not authorize them. And sometimes they took over private land. I mean, Israel has various ruses for taking over land that's owned by Palestinians. But there is some land that they sometimes recognize as actually being owned by Palestinians. In some cases, these settlers took over land that was completely private. There was really no legal basis for it. So at the time, I don't remember, about 13 of those outposts. And one of the things Israel had to do was under the roadmap in the first phase was dismantle those. Now, since then, I believe 4 have been dismantled. And there have been something like 20 dismantling operations for those 4, because it gets dismantled, then someone rebuilds it again, and then the government makes a big deal about dismantling it and rebuilds and say rebuild it again, and so this happens repeatedly. So I believe they're all there. There may be 1 or 2 that aren't. So Israel has never even done this, but it's an obligation under the roadmap. And in early October 2011, the Netanyahu government created a commission to find a way to legalize these illegal outposts. So not only are they not dismantling them, they're going to change rules, pass laws, who knows what. The commission is supposed to figure out how to do this. Actually make them all legal. So it's not only not fulfilling obligations under this more obviously roadmap, but it's, you come up with the best term for what it is that they're doing.